Hey everybody, happy Monday. Today we are live with Roy Atkinson. Roy, how are you?
Doing very well, Evan. How are you doing?
I'm good for a Monday. I really admire and respect your work, so really a delight to have you here. And you talk on so many topics from IT service management to customer experience, employee experience, and so much more. But let me not introduce you. Introduce yourself, if you would, to the folks watching.
Sure. I'm the CEO of Clifton Butterfield LLC. We're a business advisory firm. In those areas, we do employee experience and customer experience and service management. And we like to talk about ourselves as being at the intersection of emerging technology and customer experience. So we cross over into the realms of generative AI and all those wonderful technologies that are popping up in the contact center and IT support. It's a wonderful world these days.
It is super exciting. And Clifton Butterfield, is that like your alter ego? Andy Kaufman had an alter ego, Tony Clifton. Is this what's going on, or who is Clifton Butterfield?
Yep, it's Clifton Butterfield is just the name of the firm.
Okay,
It is named after a person who inhabited the planet some time ago.
okay,
Uh,
great. Well, good to know. So, really, as you say, exciting, interesting times in this world. Explain the areas you cover because it's such a diverse and interesting set of topics. How do you kind of thread them all together in your focus area as an analyst, writer, thought leader, etc.?
well, I think there's a lot of commonality in some of these areas that people might or might not think about. When you think about customer experience, you think about what are people who are doing business with your company interested in having their experience be.
Hmm.
When you think about employee experience, it's really the same thing, but from an internal perspective.
Hmm.
It's that overall feeling and perception that employees get in working with a company and doing their jobs. So they're going to have touch points with technology. They're going to have touch points with the various people in their environment, the same as customers would have with the technology that your company offers, with the people who are out there representing your company, et cetera. So there's a tremendous amount of commonality there. And what we try to look at is how to optimize that experience for people using the best technologies. We talk about appropriate technology.
Mm.
You might not need to have the most whiz bang stuff, depending on what it is that you do, but you should have the appropriate technology to make your customers' lives better, your employees' lives better. And as we know, Evan, the employee experience and customer experience are really closely related.
Yeah, almost two sides of the same coin. So let's dive in. I mean, what you talk about, let's start with IT service management. What are the key elements or foundational pillars for a solid strategy in this day and age?
Well, service management is a very interesting world these days. It's shifted. It was very process oriented for a long time.
Hmm.
And then people started to think about, well, processes are one thing, but we're talking really about people and how the technology relates to people. How can we make it stable? How can we provide better applications? How can we make sure that business continuity is there? So e even ITIL, which is really kind of one of the central frameworks that IT service
Hmm.
management is built around, certainly the terminology that we all use tends to come from ITIL. ITIL has shifted quite a bit away from being process centric to being value centric.
Mm.
So, how do you deliver value to your customers? Is really one of the focuses of ITIL now. ITIL 4 is the most recent version. There are some other things in the works in the background we don't know about yet, but basically that's the focus of it. And you deliver that value through what are called value streams that move across your organization and flow through different departments, and various employees have various roles to fulfill in that regard, and so forth. So service management has shifted somewhat from, oh, what are the 15 things we need to have in place and
Mm.
the forms we need to fill out, to how do we deliver that value? which brings up the topic of digital value. Now businesses are so digital in everything they do. You've heard it said that every company is a
Mm,
software company or every company
mm,
is a technology company. So you have digital value. And I'm also involved with the Digital Value Management System. The DVMS Institute is producing a series of publications on this topic. There's a couple of books starting off with cybersecurity, which is certainly a part of that. A basic tenet being that you can't separate strategy from risk, they need to go together. As soon as you start thinking about what you're going to deliver and how you're going to deliver it, you need to think about the risks involved in that and how to maintain the value of your digital product. So all of that is related. And then pretty much everything else falls out from underneath that, I
mm.
feel. So what I try to talk about generally is how this fits together and how your employee experience feeds the production of value and the delivery of value to your customers. To make sense to you? It's a little bit
It
complex,
does.
but it
It's
really
complex,
it,
and I love four-letter acronyms, so I'm really enjoying eating
there you
up
go.
ITSM versus ESM. But I guess it sounds like it's all about alignment. Getting your different businesses aligned with each other and with the customer. Um, and so, do you approach this as like from a management consulting standpoint, or is there a process, or is this really an IT problem, or all the above?
A lot of the time it's management, and a lot of
Hmm.
the time it's people focus. All right.
Mm,
It may be the type of leadership involved. And one of the things that we do at Clifton Butterfield, we have a kind of a
hmm,
cadre of people that we go to and recommend. We say, you need help in this specific area, talk to these people, or we'll pull them into the conversation and say, you need to think about digital leadership and what that means in your organization. We'll pull in somebody from, let's say, from Global Sway that
mm.
focuses on digital leadership. Patty Blackstaff is their CEO. So it is really that interrelation of how people feel and work in an environment that includes a lot of technology. That's exactly where we sit and try to assist businesses in getting through that and making sense of it all.
Oh, that's a fantastic approach. And you mentioned people. Of course, the human element
Mhm.
is a big question mark now that everything's becoming increasingly automated in IT. And with Gen AI, this wave is only going to increase. How do you maintain the human element while adopting all of this AI technology moving forward?
Well, I think that everything that we do in an organization starts with the decision. And so the decision there would be, let's keep this human.
Mm.
I think that there's a topic that keeps bubbling up now, and it's another acronym for you, but it's HITL, and that stands for human in the loop.
Oh, that's easy.
And and uh, what that means is that somewhere along the line there should be human oversight, human participation, or the option for humanity. And I think of a guy who was a PhD candidate at Worcester Polytechnic Institute, Chris Shagnon, real sharp thinker. He works for a company called MATLAB now,
Mm.
and Chris developed a very sophisticated model for knowledge management and interactions for IT support and service management that really was based on bots. But at every single point, he had a way to get to a human in one step. Every single point. He never had to go
Mm.
back to the beginning to get to a human.
Love
And
it.
he did that very consciously. And I think that that's one of the things that you have to keep in mind. So that's human in the loop. There's also a substantial movement led by a woman from Australia named Katrina McDermott. And Katrina's bit is humanizing IT. She's
Mm.
got a book called Humanizing IT. She's out doing courses on that. And that again, making sure that you're considering the human factor in what it is that you're doing. I think in terms of and we could probably spend this time and substantial portions of the next 10 days talking about some of the changes that are gonna happen because of things like generative AI. And we've
Well,
been in the
we,
room together, Evan, when we've shown demos of some of the stuff that this can do. But you're
yeah, no,
about to
shout
say,
out to a bunch of vendors. I think you spend days and days and weeks in those rooms. So yes, this is a fascinating discussion. And, talk about the new world of work. Of course, things have been turned upside down with hybrid work and remote work and the pandemic. How, has ITSM adapted, to this new world? What else has to change in this current new world of work?
well, I think that uh, one of the big shifts that has to happen is that how do I put this without I'm just going to say it. The heck with it. Uh, People who have the title CEO in some organizations have decided that they want people in the office, and people
Right.
have to be in the office to be innovative, to be collaborative, whatever. My question to them is, so you have a 37,000 employee organization. So all 37,000 of those people are in the same room. You don't outsource anything. You don't, it doesn't make any sense to me to think about that. But to get back to your original question, um, when it became necessary for us to make rapid adjustments and send people home basically through the pandemic and make work remote in a heck of a hurry, those organizations that had their service management acts together were able to accomplish that in a heartbeat. The IT service management folks who spearheaded the technology part of that, getting the people home, getting their equipment there, deciding what exactly they needed to protect the security of the organization, to get people in communication, all of that. If they had their act together service management wise, they got it done in a heartbeat. It was astounding how fast that change happened. Uh, Also, tremendous number of software vendors stepped up and met the challenge. We all know the story of Zoom during that period of time. There was a stat that let me see if I get this right. At the beginning of that period, I think it was the first week of March of 2020. There were something like 200,000 Teams meeting hours. At the
Mm,
end of that month, there were over a million. It
wow.
was just astounding growth that happened in that collaborative and communicative technology that happened. So organizations that understand how to do this stuff, and it's a lot of things that you have to do. Think about the business continuity factors and
Mm,
the backup capabilities and all the stuff that goes on in the background that people tend not to think about. They think of the laptop in front of them. They don't think
mm,
about the technology that makes that laptop work. That's IT's job in large part, and software vendor providers' job in large part. And that
s-
all had to work together, and it did. It did. It's
yeah.
amazing how it worked.
Yeah, it was an extraordinary accomplishment. And in the programs you build, and what are the metrics that are kind of key to gauging success? Take enterprise service management or another
Ooh,
program. What
yeah,
are
that's
there metrics that you kind of have to look at?
there are, one of the things that's happening now, and I'm pushing this as hard as I can, is that we tend to measure the electronic stuff, and we tend to measure the hardware stuff, and we tend to measure the dollar stuff. We need also to measure the human stuff, and that employee
Mm,
experience metrics area is really coming to the forefront. And I work a lot with a company called Happy Signals that
mm,
specializes in IT experience management.
mm.
They're out of Helsinki, Finland. But things like for the technology parts, Charlie Betts, who's a wonderful Forrester analyst and one of the smartest people I've ever met in my life, talks about service uptime as being really important. Obviously, you
Mm,
want people to have availability to get on their technology whenever it is that they're working, right? Release frequency, meaning how often do you update your stuff and release new products into your production environment?
mm,
How quickly things move from a concept to production. So that has to do with things like DevOps. It has to do with continuous release, change success. So how often do you release things into the environment that you consider a successful change? Meaning it doesn't take down the system. And change failure is one of the scariest things a business can have. Excuse me. Um, we've seen things like Facebook going down
mm,
totally because of a failed change, an incorrect change, or a change that was configured in such a way that it prompted a failure. And then there's that experience factor, which Charlie calls internal customer satisfaction. I tend to go beyond customer satisfaction and think more about the perceptions of the internal customers. There's a lot of emphasis now on XLAs. We've
mm,
had for a long time in IT, we've had SLAs, service level
mhm,
agreements, which is kind of the low bar. It's like, what do we say we're going to do? What's the bottom line that we say we're going to do? And if we go beyond that, we're going to get penalized in some manner or means. XLAs are more like, okay, what do you want and what are your expectations for your IT
mm,
environment? So it's kind of raising the bar, and that's become exceedingly important. So a little more than internal customer satisfaction, but still a measurement that's really important. Then you get into the nitty gritty. That's kind of the strategic view, and that's where Charlie Betts
mm,
lives. If you get down a little bit more into nitty gritty, you look at your cost per ticket or case
mhm,
or request. That's a really granular metric, and I'm pushing on a change there that's usually measured from the service desk's perspective. How much does it cost IT to service this ticket, this issue that happened?
mm,
So that includes the salaries of the people working, the technology that they use, how long it took them to fix it, et cetera. What I'm pushing on is how much productivity did that lose?
mm,
So I've got what I call a total cost of incidents that includes the salaries of the people who are affected and can't get their work done properly because there's this outage. And it's not the same as downtime. Downtime is measured at the hardware. Total cost of the incident measures human productivity. It's a little bit different. And I love to talk about that. And I've done a couple of talks on it recently. So there's also the decrease in the number of tickets. In other words,
hmm,
how good is your IT? How stable is it? How often does something interrupt the services? And are you decreasing those interruptions? Fewer escalations to the engineering levels. Better end user experience is again one of the metrics that needs to be measured for enterprise service management success.
Wow, fantastic approach to looking at this space. Let's shift gears a bit to employee experience. It's really great to see this as such a key issue these days. When I was working at Oracle, gosh, 15 years ago, every day was drudgery getting through systems and processes and apps. It was, but anyway, I digress. How do these tools help with employee experience, and what are businesses facing here, and why when it comes to their employees?
I think one of the things that employee experience does, if you're paying attention to it, is it directs you to the right areas to make changes and improvements. I
Mm,
think that's the biggest positive thing about employee experience. For example, a company notices that out of their 5 factories, 3 of them are much more productive than the other 2. So they start looking into why those other two factories are less productive. And sure enough, they find that because of the physical layout, people have a harder time getting from point A to point B. Okay, well, that's a specific improvement they can address. Maybe move some furniture around or change
Hmm.
exits and entrances. The same thing is true with technology.
Hmm.
One company I'm aware of, big company with like 40 different installations in several countries, that had a lot of cause to share files. So
Hmm.
engineers sharing plans and that kind of thing. And their file sharing system was antiquated and was problematic. When employees started complaining about that because they were asked, they said, "What's
Hmm.
getting in your way of
Hmm.
doing a good job?" And employees said, "File sharing is awful." And the company went in and addressed that and fixed it. And guess what? Happier employees, more efficient production, things lifted. And I think that if you ask the question, "What's in your way? What can we do to improve your experience day to day?" People will gladly tell you, "I hate this thing. I like that thing. Why can't we do it that way instead of this way?"
Hmm.
And I think that these concepts are not new. There's the concept of the Gemba walk, which has been around for a
Hmm.
very long time, or Tom Peters' management by wandering around.
Hmm.
You ask the people who do the work. That's my mantra, is ask the people who do the work, and they will tell you where improvements need to be made. And that is a key element of monitoring employee experience.
Wow, so simple but so impactful. And what are some of the trends that you're seeing either with companies or technology wise that IT leaders need to prioritize? Do you have a one, two, three suggestions here? Maybe folks who are listening or diving into this space.
Yeah, sure. As I said, ask the people who do the work, pay attention to what they tell you, know enough about where you're going technology wise to be able to communicate that. Don't be afraid to say, "I don't know. Tell me more about this particular thing." Boy, if I had a nickel for every time I said I don't know in my career, I'd be a rich person. You need to educate yourself a little bit. Back in my days as a musician long ago,
Hmm.
I knew enough studio lingo to communicate to the recording engineers. I didn't know a lot about recording. I didn't know all the technology on that side of it. What I knew was the music part, but I knew
Right.
enough to be able to communicate well. Make sure that you do that, and that you are talking to people who do, and try to get some common language. That's one of the things I talk about a lot with enterprise service management too, is that every department has a language. Finance has a language, and
Hmm.
HR has a language, and IT has a language. Be an interpreter. Get in the middle of it and suss out how you can communicate without being ridiculous to somebody in the other departments. Learn a common language or create a common language in your organization so that you understand each other. That is incredibly important. Goes back to what we were talking about, humanizing things, and being able to talk with each other and collaborate with each other depends on the ability to understand what the other person is saying. So cut the jargon, so much. Use it internally if you want to. Use the shorthand, but make sure that you can explain it enough to somebody else that they can understand at least the basics.
Wonderful advice. So we have AWS Reinvent happening this week. Are you watching anything in particular? Have you noticed any announcements yet that caught your
I
eye? What say you on the Amazon juggernaut?
I have not seen too much. There's a couple of people who are with AWS that I pay attention to. I haven't seen anything earth shattering from them yet, but I am paying attention somewhat. I've got a whole bunch of other stuff on my plate this week, but I am going to be reviewing what they're saying in their social feeds and so forth, and seeing what comes out of it. But Yeah, it's always interesting to see when something big like that, a big event like that is going on for a company that is so massive and so intensely involved in modern digital business,
Mm,
to see what happens. More compute. We
yeah.
need more compute.
Yeah. What else is new? Yeah, it'll be a big week for press releases. So the marketing people like
Oh,
myself are
yes.
very, very busy. Well, it's been a joy just spending a few minutes with you here. What are you excited about for the rest of the year? I can't believe we have just over a month left. Any travel, anything in particular you're focused on?
Just about winding down the travel. I think I've got one or two flights coming up.
Hmm.
Always like to make sure that Delta stays in business. It's part of my job.
And you're
Um,
down south, right? You're down
I
in
am. I'm in South Carolina.
beautiful, beautiful.
Just
So,
a hop, skip, and a jump from Atlanta. And we do a lot of flying through Atlanta. When we fly south or west, we go through Atlanta. We fly north. There's usually direct flights from 15 minutes from the house here, which
well,
is
it
pretty
is
awesome.
the biggest airport in the world now, I think, in terms of some metrics. So yes, it's
It
can't
it
avoid
it
it.
is. It
Can't
it
avoid
is
it. Well,
indeed. And
yeah, I'm sure I will be traveling more next year, and I'll probably see you at one of the many events that we might intersect in, particularly contact center and
oh,
CX, which is always fun. So I'll have to do another show around that topic. But for now, thanks so much,
it'd be
Roy, for
great.
just sharing your insights and your thoughts. Always fascinating. And folks, reach out, follow Roy on Twitter and LinkedIn. He's pretty prolific when it comes to putting out content and really good stuff. So thanks so much, everyone. Thanks for
Well,
watching. Thanks for joining.
thanks, Evan. Thanks for asking me to come on. I appreciate it.
Likewise. All right. Bye, everyone.